another week, another episode of my show, The Unsettling Show. So good to be here. If you are watching live, hi, hello. I'm just going to give a few minutes or a couple seconds here, rather, for people to come in if they are joining live. Otherwise, if you're watching in the recap, let me know in the comments. Leave a little ghost emoji in the comments if you're watching in the recap. If you're watching in the chat, say hi. And as always, as this case goes on, anyone who is watching this live, you can chat about your theories, your opinions, all the good stuff about this case that we're talking about today. And through different points of this live stream, just like we normally do, I will take some breaks to spin some slots on Jackpot City. And if you have any thoughts, comments, questions, concerns about the case, I will read those chat comments at that point. Just gonna make sure I have that all open. Beautiful. Alrighty. So, with all that being said, let's get to it. Welcome, unsettling viewers, to tonight's live stream. I'm Hauntingly Krista, and tonight we are stepping into a story that has haunted the world for nearly 2 decades. Not because it's loud, not because it's full of shocking twists, but because of how quiet it is. This is a mystery heartbreaking in its simplicity and terrifying in its ambiguity. Because sometimes the most disturbing stories aren't about what we know, they're about what we don't. So tonight we are talking about the Madeleine McCann case. Madeleine McCann was a nearly 4-year-old girl who vanished from her family's holiday apartment in Praia da Luz, Portugal, on the night of May 3rd, 2007. She went to sleep in a place that was supposed to be safe, a place meant for rest, a place meant for family, and by the end of the night, she was gone. No witnesses, no struggle, no clear trail, just an empty bed and a question that has never been answered. And while the years have passed, this case has never truly faded, because this isn't just another missing person story. This is a global saga, one that has involved international police forces, controversial investigations, public accusations, and a media frenzy so intense it reshaped the narrative in real time. It's a case filled with suspects but no charges, theories but no proof, hope but no closure. And every answer seems to create two more questions. So tonight we're going to walk through what happened, what's been claimed, what's been investigated, and what still refuses to be explained. Not to centralize or sensationalize, but not to speculate widely, but to sit with the discomfort of a story that remains unfinished. So, settle in, turn off the lights if you want, put your phones down, let the room get quiet, because what you're about to hear isn't just a mystery, it's unsettling. Okay? So, with that being said, before we jump into the case and we get a little bit dark here, I'm going to spin some slots on Jackpot City. Let's open this guy up. Beautiful. If you guys don't know, this is Jackpot City. It is a online casino, and what we do here every single stream is we spin some slots. So I'm gonna open up. This one has been kind of fun. It's kind of Christmassy. So we're now in January. Happy New Year, by the way, everybody. But honestly, it's kind of fun. I was playing it earlier today, and I'm like, this is a vibe. I think this is what we're gonna rock with today. So, as this is loading, what we're gonna be talking about while we spin these slots is talking about a question that I saw on a forum. There we go. Which was, why has the Madeleine case gotten so much attention compared to other missing children cases, which is valid. This was one of the first true crime cases that I'd ever heard about, like on the news. And connection. Okay, let's leave. Oops, I'm still. Okay, we're gonna. Oops, let me switch this layout real quick. there we go. That's better. Sorry. Okay, I just lost connection briefly for a moment, and now I lost my. um, oh, there it is. Evil. Or if that one, maybe it's the graphics, because that one I noticed has like the little girl in the corner, which again, the graphics, some of the like just the animations that they have on these slots, I really enjoy. Um, but let's just do a Jackpot City themed one. There we go. There we go. I'll wait for this to load. So, this was one of the very first cases that I'd ever heard about before I even started looking into true crime on my own spare time. You know, this was a global news story when I was growing up, and I remember hearing about it. And throughout the years, especially as I got into true crime and I started, you know, expressing interest in it and looking into a bunch of other cases, I always wondered why Madeleine McCann case got so much more attention than a lot of other cases. And I mean, there's so many missing people, so many missing children um, every single year. So obviously, it's hard to give every single case attention. Um, but I thought that this was a really good question being asked because we're diving into this case today, um, to kind of cover that and see what other people thought about that question. So, why has the Madeleine McCann case gotten so much more attention than other missing child cases? Now, this response I thought was quite interesting. This person says, I think it's because of the nature of the evidence or lack thereof, which we will get to. It's similar to the John Benet Ramsey case, that the evidence is confusing, um, or it's similar to the John Benet Ramsey case in that the evidence is confusing, and because it's confusing, the hypothesis that the parents did it is very popular. Again, we will get into this. There's a certain degree of intrigue attached to the case. 100%. I definitely agree with that. There's also this person. This person left a very long, lengthy theory. Or not really theory, I guess, just their thoughts on why. Um, they said, I think part of it is the McCann's connections and their campaign to maintain media attention. Another part is the uniqueness of the case. This exact situation is almost unheard of. A child being suspected of being abducted from their resort apartment in a foreign country. Add to this around the time people would typically lose interest a few months later. Portuguese police drop an absolute bombshell that the McCanns were now suspects, and blood was found in the apartment and the rental car. Again, we will get there. Granted, now we know it wasn't, but that was how it was reported at the time. Imagine the controversy of it all, especially to the members of the public that believed them and defended them, the level of betrayal they felt. And I definitely think that is a great theory. There's some other ones in here, some shorter ones. Oh, look, we got $3. um, Someone said, you know, it's a white, blonde, adorable little girl, affluent parents, suspicious circumstances all contribute to the fact that, you know, she could have been getting more media attention that way. But um, that is kind of just a little brief overview as we spin some slots here. Do a couple more spins right now before we stop, and then we'll return to this in a little bit. Hopefully I can get the Evil Dozen slots working because I really, really enjoy that one. Again, with the gingerbread and the candy canes, very Christmas. So I don't know, I guess I'm still stuck in the holiday mode, but we'll do a couple more here. Hopefully we can end this round of slots on a little bit of a win. We got a couple. There we go. Oh, something big's happening. The gold blitz. No, nothing. Just ramping up my dreams. Okay, there we go. 50 cents. I'll take it. I'll take it. You guys know, always on a high note on the Jackpot City. Okay, let me just make sure that this guy is rocking. Beautiful. Alrighty, so let's dive in and let's go back. The year is 2007. The place is Praia da Luz, might be mispronouncing that wrong, in Portugal, a coastal resort town on Portugal's Algarve, a sunny, tranquil destination, popular with British holidaymakers. So on the evening of May 3rd, Kate and Jerry McCann, both doctors from Rothley, Leicester, England, were on holiday with their three children. So we have Madeleine McCann, age 3, and her two-year-old twin siblings, Sean and Emily. It was the sixth day of their vacation. That night, in what would become one of the most scrutinized decisions in criminal history, Kate and Jerry left their children asleep in the family's ground floor rental apartment while they went to dinner with their friends at a nearby tapas restaurant. They weren't far, maybe 50 meters away, and there was a routine. Every evening, the adults would dine together. They had set up a schedule of child checks, periodically returning to the apartment to make sure that all the kids were fine. Now, at around 9:05 p.m., Jerry made his first check on the children. He found all three of them asleep, that little sanctuary in a foreign land untouched. Then at 10 p.m., Kate walked to the apartment to check again. This is less than an hour later. But this time, something was wrong. The window was open, the shutter was up, and Madeleine was gone. No sign of struggle, no obvious evidence, just an open window, an empty bed, and a world forever changed. So, now the initial search begins. Police were called. Detectives arrived. Dogs were brought in. As dawn broke, searches expanded across Praia da Luz, on the ground and water, up the cliffs, in the crowds, and within days it became international news. Massive. Rewards were offered, celebrities appealed for her safe return. The public was riveted. But the case yielded frustratingly little. No confirmed sightings, no definitive leads, and very little solid physical evidence. Then, within months, the investigation stumbled into controversy. So, in September 2007, the Portuguese police named Kate and Jerry McCann, Madeleine's parents, as arguidos, formal suspects, in their daughter's disappearance. So, this was shocking at the time. It's shocking. It would be shocking now, obviously, to have the parents of a missing child be the suspects. But that was just the reality of the case. It was shocking. The reasoning: traces of blood thought to match Madeleine were found at the family's rental vehicle. Police pursued theories of accident or even concealment. The McCanns vehemently denied all involvement. They fought back, they sued, and they won. The libel suits against critics became legendary, and they were ultimately cleared of all suspicion. But that early tension, that fight between grief, suspicion, and media scrutiny set the tone for everything that followed. So, over the next years, investigators followed nearly every conceivable lead. Sightings of a man carrying a child near the resort, sightings near train stations, reports from Germany, France, Spain, even Africa, and more than 8,000 potential sightings were investigated by law enforcement. Over 1,000 sex offenders were reviewed by Scotland Yard's Operation Grange, but none, absolutely none, yielded definitive closure. Theories blossomed: abduction by a stranger, burglary gone wrong, child trafficking, mistaken identity, accidental death followed by panic and cover up, but none could be proven. And as the years passed, more than a decade, the world began to wonder, could she still be alive? Theories abounded, even hopeful ones, and then eventually the case took a dramatic turn. So now we're in June of 2020. German prosecutors named a new figure, a man identified only as Christian B at the time due to German privacy laws, but he is Christian Brückner. We know that now. A German national with a long criminal record, including child abuse convictions. Now, Bruckner had been living in the Algarve region near Praia da Luz at the time of Madeleine's disappearance. Police records placed his mobile phone in the area on the day that she vanished. German investigators told media that they have circumstantial evidence that he abducted and likely killed Madeleine McCann, but so far, they have not charged him with that crime. So let that sink in. Despite being considered the prime suspect and despite investigations spanning years, no formal indictment related to Madeleine has ever been made. Now, in June of 2025, just this past summer, a search operation was initiated in Portugal, decades after well, nearly 2 decades after the disappearance, focusing on land between Praia da Luz and a property where Bruckner lived in 2007. Authorities used ground Authorities used ground penetrating radar, machinery, and extensive manpower. And this was a rare active search, not just paperwork. So Portuguese and German police worked under a European investigation order, hoping to find new evidence that might finally close this case after all these years. Yet, as of now, nothing conclusive has emerged still. The world watched closely in September of 2025 when Christian Brückner was released from prison, not for Madeleine's disappearance, but after serving a sentence for the rape of a 72-year-old American woman in Portugal in 2005. And here's how it stood. He is the prime suspect in Madeleine's disappearance. He was formally identified as a suspect in 2020. He denies any involvement, of course, and no charges have been filed in relation to the McCann case despite investigations. A German court later ruled that he could leave the country, overturning restrictions that had kept him confined in Germany after his release, and that decision hinged on EU freedom of movement laws. This sent shockwaves around the world. For many, the idea that the prime suspect, the man many prosecutors believe responsible, could walk free, travel, disappear again, is terrifying. And that's the unsettling reality of this case. Now, next, we'll explore the disturbing details of Bruckner's criminal history, what evidence investigators believe they have against him, and why some searches focused on water, wells, and dams, as well as the psychology a little bit behind global obsession with this case, which we kind of touched on a little bit with people's theories on forums, but we'll get into more of that. Now, if you're watching this live, drop a comment where you're watching from, whether it's if you're watching it currently live, or if you're watching this in the recap, let me know in the comments or in the chat, and share what you think happened that night in Praia da Luz. Now stay with me because in part 2, the story gets deeper, darker, and even more unsettling. But we're going to spin a little bit of slots on Jackpot City once again. Just to take a little breather. Jackpot City. Okay. So again, Jackpot City, this is online casino. It is the main sponsor of this show. So thank you so much, Jackpot City. We spin slots here every single stream. And if you are of age, definitely sign up and we can spin some slots together. These are some of my current favorites. Let's do the Wildwood Curse. This one's quite fun. And yeah, there we go. Let's get this going. I just love this one. It reminds me of Friday the 13th. Okay, so we'll spin some of these slots and I have some theory already. Owen, I love it. I have some theories to read to you guys. So the question here is, what do you think happened with Madeleine McCann? And if you're watching this, feel free to drop your theories of what happened to Madeleine McCann in the comments or in the live chat. So what do you think happened with Madeleine McCann? So this person has commented, I lean towards she was abducted, whether that was by CB, Christian Brückner, or someone else that remains to be seen. The Germans are running out of time to charge Christian Brückner. I believe the clock, this was last year, I believe the clock actually runs out this year for them to do it before he gets released from prison. So this was an old one. I don't think her parents have been conclusively exonerated, but if they did do it, it's remarkable how well their situation has held up after 17 years. Another person has commented, I believe it was a crime of opportunity. Somebody who knew how to get in and out of the hotel room that the McCanns were staying at and stalked and preyed upon Madeleine and waited until after they left to go out. Someone commented, I think she has passed. I unfortunately have leaned more towards this in recent years. I had held out hope for a long time, but I just think it's extremely unlikely unless she has been trafficked, which I don't think, but I guess anything is possible. This person says it's pretty obvious that that gross German dude took her and murdered her. I hope her family gets some closure soon. I agree. Then we have this person. They said, I've always had a suspicion of the family, but if that was true, I think arrest would have happened by now. I agree. Not that I think that the family's suspicious, but that the arrest would have happened if that was the case. Um, this person says, whatever it is, isn't it odd for parents of three children, well, not four, 3 years old and 2 year old twins, to leave them alone at home and go to a restaurant, and even keeping the gate slightly open? Now, while I do understand this, and I think maybe it's nowadays, due to the fact that this case happened, I feel like it's more frowned upon to do that now. But at the time, I think that that was more socially acceptable. Also, keep in mind that where the parents were eating dinner and where the apartment was, where the children were, was 50 meters away. Like they could see it. If they were running to the apartment, they could get to the apartment in like 30 seconds. Um, so they were very, very, very close. And they're on a resort. They think that it's safe, right? Obviously we know better now, but at the time this was like a major case. And it had lots of twists and turns that we had never seen before, really. Not at least not like this. So I don't know, I think it was just poor judgment and like lack of knowledge of what could happen. So I don't know, it's easy to say that now, but I mean, I do agree. Obviously, I personally wouldn't do that. But then again, I also knew that this case happened. So I digress. We'll do a couple more slot spins here before we continue. And two. There we go. 40 cents. I'll take that one. So we'll stop sharing that guy and fix this. Beautiful. Alrighty. So we just walked through the night Madeleine vanished and the early chaos that followed. Now we're going to talk about the man investigators believe may finally hold that key. A man whose name alone sends chills through this case. So, we've talked about Christian Brückner. Who is Christian Brückner? Often referred to in the media as Christian B., born in Germany in 1977. By the time Madeleine McCann disappeared in 2007, he was already a deeply troubled individual with a long and disturbing criminal history. This is not a man who simply drifted into police radar later. This is a man who lived on the margins, drifting between countries, using fake identities, stealing, dealing drugs, committing sexual crimes, and crucially, living in the Algarve region of Portugal at the exact time that Madeleine vanished. Bruckner was known to police in Portugal well before 2007. He had previous convictions for burglary and theft, and often targeting holiday properties, places like the McCanns property, or apartment rather. So let that sink in. Holiday apartments, unlocked windows, tourists unfamiliar with their surroundings, and a nasty criminal. Between 1995 and 2007, Bruckner spent years moving between Germany and Portugal, particularly the Algarve. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. He lived in ramshackle homes, camped out of vans, and squatted in abandoned buildings. Now, one of those properties, a farmhouse near Praia da Luz, not far from where Madeleine disappeared. Investigators later discovered that Bruckner owned multiple vehicles at the time, including a Jaguar and a camper van. He also used prepaid mobile phones, a detail that becomes very important in this case. On the night Madeleine vanished, records show Bruckner received a phone call at 9:15 p.m., just 10 minutes after Jerry McCann's check on the children, and less than an hour before Kate discovered Madeleine was gone. That phone call pinged near Praia da Luz, and to this day, investigators have not publicly identified who made that call, only that is considered highly significant. And I can agree with that. What makes Bruckner so unsettling isn't just where he was, it's who he was becoming. His crimes show a clear escalation. So we have burglaries to theft to drug trafficking to sexual violence. As mentioned briefly earlier in 2005, just 2 years before Madeleine vanished, Brückner brutally raped a 72-year-old American woman inside her holiday home in Praia da Luz after breaking in. That crime alone establishes a terrifying pattern: breaking into tourist accommodations, targeting vulnerable victims, operating the same small resort town. And yet, at that time, Brückner was not on anyone's radar in relation to Madeleine. It wouldn't be until over a decade later that German authorities quietly began piecing together his movements. So here's the question many people ask: why Germany? Why not Portugal? Why not the UK? The answer is simple and deeply unsettling as well. German prosecutors believe that they have evidence suggesting that Madeleine is dead. And under German law, that allowed them to take the lead. But here's the catch: they have never publicly revealed that evidence. No body, no crime scene, no recovered remains. Just circumstantial connections, strong ones, but still circumstantial. German authorities have stated repeatedly that they are convinced Brückner murdered Madeleine, yet they acknowledge they may never be able to prove that in court. And that tension between belief and proof is the beating heart of this case. In 2016, German police raided a property linked to Brückner. What they found there was disturbing, to say the least. Multiple hard drives, USB sticks, images and videos described in court documents as the worst imaginable. Some of the material involved children. And an important note here, and I want to be very clear, especially for this audience: there has never been confirmation that Madeleine McCann appears in any of that material, but I digress. The existence of it fundamentally changed how investigators viewed Brückner, though. So this wasn't just a burglar, this wasn't just a drifter, this was someone capable of extreme harm. Now, over the years, searches related to Brückner have focused on some very specific locations: wells, reservoirs, dams, remote scrubland. Now, one of the most talked about sites is the Ra Dam, roughly 50 kilometers from Praia da Luz. Brückner reportedly frequented that area and even referenced it in disturbing online conversations. Search teams scoured that dam in 2023, draining water, examining sediment, hoping for any trace of evidence, but nothing conclusive was found. And that's the cruelty of this case. Every search brings hope, and every search ends in silence. Now let's pause for a moment, because no telling of this case is complete without acknowledging Kate and Jerry McCann. For nearly 20 years, they have lived under an unimaginable microscope. Accused, cleared, judged, sympathized with, vilified, every facial expression analyzed, every word dissected. And yet, they have never stopped searching. They've funded private investigations. They've supported Operation Grange in the UK. They've continued to mark Madeleine's birthday every year, publicly and privately. In 2006, they expressed renewed hope that, in 2025, they expressed renewed hope that a breakthrough could still happen even after all this time. That hope is quiet now, measured, fragile, but it's still there. So why does the Madeleine McCann case still grip us? Why, after thousands of missing persons cases worldwide, does this one endure? I think it's because it sits at the intersection of our deepest fears: a child vanishing without a trace, a safe place becoming unsafe, a family holiday turning into a literal nightmare, and a suspect who may know everything and yet says nothing. There's no ending, no closure, no certainty, and that unresolved nature makes this case linger like an echo that never quite fades. Next, we're going to explore the most compelling theories, which ones don't hold up and which ones could be possible, the role of media sensationalism, why the case may never be prosecuted, and the haunting question: could Madeleine still be alive? If this case unsettles you, you are not alone, because sometimes the most terrifying stories aren't the ones with monsters, they're the ones with unanswered questions. So stay with me here. We're going to spin some slots on Jackpot City once again. before we continue on with the case. Back to Jackpot City here. Let's try to do the evil dozen again, and hopefully the connection stays stable with me this time. There we go. Yes, there we go. I don't know, I just love this. Like, she's just in the corner, she looks kind of spooky, and these gingerbread men are extra creepy. So, while we spin some of these slots, let's do some more theories here. The question asked on this forum, what do you think happened to Madeleine McCann and why? This person said, again, these are all theories from people on the internet, not my own theories, not my own opinions, but this is what is being said. So, this person says the parents were neglectful by leaving their kids alone unsupervised. They did this a lot and made no secret of it, talking about it openly and doing the regular checks that any person on the street could clearly observe, with neighbors even being able to hear the babies crying. I didn't know that. A predator saw this plainly and decided to act, and was able to do so with ease because it was clearly visible the parents were going to check on a fairly regular schedule, and they weren't locking the apartment afterwards. Someone says, I have no idea what happened, but there is not one shred of evidence that she was abducted. Once you accept this, the only alternative is a cover up by her parents. There's a lot of talk about the parents still. And this was only from a year ago, too, so keep that in mind. The only thing I know for a fact is that Maddie would still be alive had her parents not neglected her. Wow, there's a lot of people on this that are blaming the parents. I knew that that was a theory, obviously. That one has been talked about a bit, but I didn't know that so many people, random people on the internet, were really just teaming up against them. Someone said, I reckon she died that night, if not earlier, in the apartment by complete accident. There is little evidence besides press coverage that she was abducted. There was a lot of spin around the apparent lack of thoroughness conducted by the Portuguese police, even though looking into the family is a fairly normal strategy conducted by most British police forces. If she was abducted, the abductor left zero trace whatsoever, and the arrest made by the German police has led to really nothing. Yeah, I guess this is so interesting. It's now these theories from this question, this forum is really making me starting to change my own opinions on this case a little bit. Another person has two possible theories about this. Madeleine died in the apartment, probably from falling, and the parents covered it up. Or someone interested in taking a young child got to hear about the parents' poor child caring and realized they had a chance there. Wow. It's just so incredibly sad. So incredibly sad. Do a couple more spins here. Okay, well, actually, we'll leave it at that one because that was a nice little win. Look at them. They're just like little evil little gingerbread men. Okay, with that, I'm going to get back to this and we will continue. Because this is the point in the story where facts blur, the theories multiply, and emotions begin to outweigh evidence. Because when answers don't come, people fill in the gaps. So tonight, we're going to talk about the most common theories surrounding Madeleine McCann and her disappearance, which ones hold weight and which ones don't, and why some ideas refuse to die. For the first theory, let's talk about the abduction by a stranger. This is the theory law enforcement now considers the most likely. A stranger, possibly opportunistic, possibly predatory, enters the McCann's apartment through an unlocked window or door, takes Madeleine, and disappears into the night. Why this theory persists: Praia da Luz was full of tourists and transient workers, and the apartment was ground floor and easily accessible. There were reports of suspicious men carrying children, and Brückner's known pattern fits this scenario. But here's what makes this theory so chilling. If this was an opportunistic abduction, It means the act could have taken minutes. A child asleep, no struggle, no noise, just a moment of vulnerability and a life erased. Now, the second theory is a burglary gone wrong. Closely tied to the abduction theory, we have this burglary one. Someone enters the apartment intending to steal, not abduct, but encounters Madeleine awake. So panic sets in, and the child is taken to prevent identification. This theory gained traction early on because burglaries were common in that area, and Brückner himself had history of exactly this kind of crime. But there's a problem with it. Burglars want speed, they want silence, and they want escape routes. Taking a child dramatically increases risk in all of those. That doesn't mean it's impossible, but it does mean the perpetrator would have been extremely reckless or already deeply disturbed or more deeply disturbed than they already are. The third theory is accidental death and cover up. As we just spoke about some of the theories online from people on forums, a lot of people in that particular forum are kind of on that rowboat of things. And while I understand it, let's get into it. This is one of the most controversial. This is one of the most controversial theories, and one that fueled early suspicion towards Kate and Jerry McCann. And the theory goes like this: Madeleine dies accidentally, possibly from a fall or another type of medical emergency, and her parents panic, choosing to hide the body to avoid blame. This theory was driven largely by cadaver dog alerts, blood traces later deemed inconclusive, and media speculation. But here's why this theory has largely collapsed. There is no physical evidence to support it. No body has ever been found. The McCanns were cleared and formally apologized to as well. And the logistics of hiding a body in a foreign country under intense scrutiny are nearly impossible. This theory persists not because it's strong, but because people want control. It's psychologically easier to believe parents did something wrong than to accept that a child can vanish into nothing. The third theory, the fourth theory, child trafficking. This is the theory that gets whispered about online quite a bit and shouted in comment sections as well. The idea that Madeleine was taken and sold into trafficking. But here's the hard truth with that. There is no evidence that organized trafficking rings abduct children from holiday apartments in this way. Trafficking typically involves vulnerable positions, or vulnerable populations, long-term grooming, or familiar environments. Random abduction of a high-profile child in a tourist resort would be an extraordinary, risky method. It's frightening, but fear does not equal fact. So could Madeleine still be alive? This is the question that never goes away. Could she? German prosecutors say no. They believe she is dead, but belief is not proof. No remains have ever been found. No confirmed DNA. No death scene. Over the years, there have been claims, women coming forward believing they might be Madeleine. Most recently, viral speculation on TikTok reignited hope, only to collapse under more scrutiny. Still, the absence of certainty leaves space for possibility, and hope, even fragile hope, has power. In my personal opinion, I believe if she is still alive, it would have had to be some sort of trafficking situation, because I don't understand why she would have been kept alive for this long if that wasn't the reason, or like something of that sort, some sort of ring, some sort of, I don't know, that's just my own theory, if she is still alive. Otherwise, it just doesn't seem likely that she would be, in my personal opinion. But I hope, I hope that we eventually find out that she is, and she's found safe and sound. But the longer time goes on, obviously the risk, or the, what's the word, likelihood of that being the case is slim to none, but always possible. Now we need to talk about the media, because the Madeleine McCann case did not exist in a vacuum. It existed in headlines, tabloids, 24-hour news cycles, speculation disguised as reporting. Kate McCann's expressions were analyzed frame by frame. Their fundraising was criticized, their behavior was deemed wrong, whatever that means in grief. And here's the danger of that kind of coverage: it doesn't just report the story, it reshapes it. The media turned a missing child into a global spectacle, and in doing so, they may have damaged the investigation beyond repair. There's a psychological reason that we can't really let this case go, why we obsess over it so much. It attacks our sense of safety. If it can happen on vacation, it can happen anywhere. If educated, loving parents can lose a child, no one is immune. Obviously, I know based on theories, some people don't believe that to be the case for these parents, but again, proven innocent until proven guilty. They have been cleared. So, with that assumption, you know, and honestly, taking this to any parent that is smart and loves their children, it shows that this can happen to anybody, really. It also attacks our sense. It attacks the question: if decades pass with no answers, what does justice even mean? This case forces us to confront randomness, and humans hate randomness. So we look for villains, i.e., the parents. We look for mistakes, leaving them in the apartment alone, unlocked. We look for meaning. Why Madeleine, right? Even when there may be none, is the reality. Here is the truth, the unsettling reality, stripped of speculation. A child disappears. Someone likely knows what happened. That person has never spoken. And time keeps moving forward. Evidence degrades, memories fade, witnesses die. The longer a case goes unsolved, the harder truth becomes to reach. In the next part, we will cover the most recent legal developments, why Brückner may never be charged, what justice looks like without answers, and how Madeleine McCann is remembered today. And this is where the story becomes less about what happened and more about what we do when we may never know. Some mysteries frighten us because of what they reveal, and others frighten us because of what they don't. So stay with me here. Let's spin some slots on Jackpot City one last time before we get into this last part of the case. Jackpot City. Okay, we'll do a different slot this time around. Where am I? You know what's been a fun one? Granny versus zombies. It's just, I don't know, something about the animations. It's just so fun. Okay, so we'll spin some here. And let's talk about a couple more theories spoken about online. And again, anyone who's in the chat right now, if you have any theories about what happened, feel free to drop it in the chat. Let me know. And we'll just keep spinning some slots here. Okay, so this one is interesting. This person comments, if this predator theory is accurate, just move this guy to the side. If this predator theory is accurate, how do we account for the following? Why all the discrepancies between the Tapas timelines of who went to which apartments and when to check children? Because there was more parents, more children checking on their children with the McCann parents. Why is there so much confusion on exactly who picked up 3 kids that afternoon and had tea at the tapas bar? So this goes more into earlier in the day, which we didn't really touch on. And why did Jerry send David to go check on Kate and the kids right after Jerry had just left to go play tennis? This is all in a different part of the case, but very valid questions. Now, another person comments, I believe she got out by herself to look for her mom and dad, got hit by a passing car, driven by someone drunk, possibly, otherwise illegally driving or on the run. They panicked, stuck her in the back of the car, and drove off. Could be possible, honestly. You know, if you wake up in a foreign place and maybe you had a nightmare, had a bad dream, you wake up, try to go find your parents. I feel like I feel like the Christian Brückner theory is a little bit more plausible just based off of all the quote unquote evidence against him. It's not really evidence because it can't really be used in a court of law, but um, that is an interesting theory. People who think Maddie was abducted have only read the very biased media reports. Okay, maybe that's maybe I was just called out. If you read the McCann files and the interviews police had with the Tapas group, things become more murky. Interesting. Okay, I might have to do a little bit more digging on that side of things. Someone said again, I think she died. Parents cover up. I think either this is another person. Oh, look at that. What's going on? Oh, some gold coins. Love it. Um, this person says, I think either Maddie has woken up and went to find her parents. At that point, she's either run into someone who's taken her, or she had an accident that resulted in her death, kind of similar to what that other person was talking about. This is most understandable to me as a parent. All my kids would have come to find me at 3 years old, and unlocked doors or little gates wouldn't have stopped them. Very valid. That, okay. I could be swayed more to that theory for sure. This person says their three theories are: the parents accidentally killed her, the resort was being watched, they saw the parents continually leaving the apartment unattended and saw an opportunity and entered the property and took her. So we're talking about the resort being responsible. And same situation as two, she was abducted and sold to a couple who can't have kids. Interesting. And that kind of goes with, there's a few people that have come out. There was a recent one on TikTok that came out and said she might be Madeleine McCann, because there was no pictures of her from younger than like 3 years old, and her parents were kind of sus. But that came to like it was a dead end. She wasn't actually Madeleine McCann. That was discovered. But I remember, I think that was like last year or the year before that on TikTok. It was a big thing. Um, but there's been a few people that have come forward and said, I think I'm Madeleine. Um, so I don't know, maybe it could be. Again, that goes kind of with like trafficking, not like in a different type of trafficking, I guess, like selling them to someone who can't have children. I don't know. Messed up either way, though. Do a couple more spins here. And one more. Oh, look at that. Wild. All right, we'll stop sharing this guy. And we'll fix this right here. Alrighty. So if you're still with me, thank you, because this is the hardest part of the story that we're about to get to right now. Not because it's graphic or shocking, but because it is unfinished. This is where we confront the reality that some cases do not end with answers, only with time passing. As of now, nearly 19 years after Madeleine McCann vanished, no one has ever been charged with her disappearance. Christian Brückner remains the prime suspect in the eyes of German prosecutors, but the brutal truth here is that believing someone committed a crime and proving it beyond reasonable doubt are two very different things. The evidence against Brückner is largely circumstantial: his presence in the area, his criminal history, his phone activity, his behavior and statements. But there's no forensic evidence tying him directly to Madeleine. No DNA, no eyewitness, no confession. And without those things, prosecutors may never have enough to bring a case to trial, let alone win one, even when he looks extremely guilty, in my opinion. In recent years, one of the most unsettling developments in this case occurred quietly, almost bureaucratically. Christian Brückner completed his prison sentence for the unrelated crime to the 72-year-old woman, right, that we spoke about earlier, and then he was released. A German court ruled that under EU law, he could leave the country, no charges, no legal justification to hold him. That moment forced the world to confront something deeply uncomfortable, though. A man believed by authorities to be responsible for the death of a child can walk free because belief is not proof. That does not mean he's innocent, but it means the system requires certainty, and certainty is exactly what this case lacks, unfortunately. Time is the greatest enemy of justice here. And in any case, really. Evidence degrades, we spoke about that earlier. Memories distort. Witnesses can move, die, forget things. What may have been solvable in 2007 becomes exponentially harder in 2026. Every year that passes reduces the chances of a credible confession, recoverable physical evidence, a reliable testimony, and yet investigators still keep going. Not because they're confident, but because stopping would mean accepting that Madeleine will never be found, which we don't want to do, right? Let's talk about Kate and Jerry again. Not as suspects, like a lot of people have speculated, not as media figures, but as parents. They've lived almost half of Madeleine's lifespan without knowing what happened to her. They've marked birthdays without her, milestones without her, aging without her. They've spoke about what it's like to live in a permanent state of not knowing, which is a grief that never resolves or settles. No funeral, no grave, no goodbye, just absence. And still, they continue to push for answers. Quietly now, without spectacle, without expectation, but hope has become something smaller, but it hasn't disappeared. So, what does justice look like here? This is the question that I want you to sit with. Is it a conviction, a recovered body, a confession? Or is it simply the truth, even if it comes too late? Sometimes justice isn't punishment. Sometimes it's knowing. And sometimes, painfully, even that is denied. Madeleine McCann will forever be remembered as a 3-year-old girl. She will never age in the public imagination. Her face, frozen in photographs, has become a symbol of innocence, of vulnerability, of unanswered loss. And that may be the most haunting thing of all. A life paused, a story interrupted, not by choice, not by fate, but by someone else's actions. People sometimes ask, why are we still talking about this case? We talked about this earlier. Because unresolved stories demand witness. Because silence benefits perpetrators. Because forgetting is a form of surrender. And because every time we speak her name, Madeleine is remembered as more than a headline. She was real, she mattered, and she still matters. Here is the final, most unsettling truth of this case. We may never know exactly what happened to Madeleine McCann. There may be no arrest, no trial, no final chapter, just a question mark where certainty should be. And yet the search continues, because some mysteries are too important to abandon, even when answers seem impossible. The disappearance of Madeleine McCann reminds us that evil doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't always arrive loudly. It doesn't always look monstrous. It doesn't always come with warnings we recognize in the moment. Sometimes it slips in quietly, through an open window, through an unlocked door, through a gap we didn't know was even there. Sometimes it enters places that feel safe, places filled with laughter earlier that day, places meant for rest, for family, for sleep, a holiday, a routine, a night that began like any other, like the previous 5 nights. And that's what makes it so deeply unsettling. Because if it can happen there, in a well-lit resort, in a familiar room, while loving parents were just steps away, then it challenges the comforting belief that tragedy only strikes in obvious danger. And sometimes it leaves nothing behind. No clear answers, no final truth, no moment of resolution that allows grief to settle into something manageable. Just that absence, just the questions, just the echo of a child who should have grown up but didn't. Stories like this don't haunt us because they're sensational. They haunt us because they are unfinished. Because someone, somewhere, still knows what happened. And because the rest of us are left holding the weight of not knowing. So thank you once again for sitting with the story with me tonight, for staying through the discomfort, for bearing witness, not just to the mystery, but to the human cost behind it. Because remembering matters, because attention matters, and because silence is never neutral. This has been Unsettling. I am Hauntingly Krista. Make sure you subscribe to this page. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at The Unsettling Show. You can also follow me on Hauntingly Krista on Instagram and TikTok, as well as on YouTube at Hauntingly Krista as well. For words. We stream every single Monday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Thursdays from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can join me here live, or you can follow up on the recap that will be published after the stream finishes. And again, if you want the shorter clips, you can catch them on the YouTube Shorts, on the Instagram, on the TikTok. So make sure to check them out all there. I will see you in our next stream on Thursday from 5 to 6. So until then, stay curious, stay aware, and never underestimate how quickly the world can change. Thank you all so much for joining me tonight. I will see you soon.